Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Sonia, and today we're tackling a really tough but incredibly important topic that many of you have experienced or wondered about: trauma bonding. If you've ever been in a relationship that really felt like there was a magnetic pull pulling you back in, even when it hurts, making it feel impossible to leave, you're not alone. That's often what a trauma bond feels like. It's not about being weak. It's about a very real, deep connection that forms between someone who is being hurt and the person hurting them. It's a survival response, a powerful psychological wiring in our brains. So let's try to understand this confusing connection, how it takes hold, and why it feels so incredibly hard to break that connection and get the heck out. What exactly is trauma bonding? Imagine a rope that's incredibly strong and it's tying you to someone even when they cause you pain. That's a trauma bond. It's a deep emotional connection that develops in abusive relationships because of this really confusing cycle. So 1 minute, you're experiencing pain and emotional distress and neglect. And in the next, there's this moment of kindness or affection or even an apology. This back and forth, it creates this really complex, confusing attachment that makes it incredibly difficult to see the truth of what's really going on. It messes with your head and your heart, of course, making it hard to trust your own instincts. To understand how confusing this cycle is, I want to talk about 7 stages that often lead to a trauma bond. Now, I could also call these the 7 stages of narcissistic relationships, given that trauma bonds are really the hallmark of these kinds of relationships, narcissistic relationships. So the first is the honeymoon phase. Now, we use that often when we think of when we first get married and it's all bliss. Very similar. But when you're talking about a narcissistically abusive relationship, you've probably heard the phrase that's really often used in that context, which is love bombing. This is often how it starts. They shower you with all kinds of over-the-top compliments, and there's a constant sort of flow of praise and endless attraction. You feel like the most special person in the world, like a prince or a princess, adored and cherished. It's incredibly exciting, and it's also addictive. Number 2, getting hooked. That trust and that dependency. Because of all that attention and praise you got in the beginning, you start to deeply trust that person. You might even feel like you do anything to keep that intensity of that connection as long as you can, becoming so dependent on them for all of your emotional needs, and that includes your happiness. The third is the shift or the onslaught of criticism. This is when things start to change. They begin to criticize you. They make you feel small, and they insult you and deliberately make you feel bad about yourself. It's a shocking and painful kind of change from the love bombing that you experienced and then all of a sudden to what's called devaluing in that narcissistic relationship. The fourth is making you doubt yourself, so otherwise known as gaslighting. There are very many forms of gaslighting, and I might do an episode on the various forms of gaslighting. Next, they start to mess with your mind, making you think that you're going crazy. That's been a common term that a lot of my clients use is, I don't want to sound crazy, or I think I'm going crazy. They might deny things that they clearly did, and I'm talking about the narcissist, clearly said or did to twist your words or to tell you that you are too sensitive. Heard that one a lot. This makes you question your own memory, your feelings, and even your sanity, hence the word crazy. The fifth, the emotional roller coaster, the addiction, the up and the down, the up and the down. Because of the intense ups and downs, the extreme highs of their affection, followed by the painful lows of their abuse, your emotions become addicted to this cycle, the up and down. You expect it. Your brain gets used to it because the brain's malleable. Those rare positive moments feel like a huge relief and a reward after the stress, almost like a drug you crave. The 6 is you lose yourself. Over time, you become so wrapped up in the relationship that your own identity starts to fade away. Now, I've had clients say, I don't even have an identity. I didn't know what my identity was before I married this person or was with this person. And I certainly didn't know during the relationship. So when they come out of these relationships, they don't have a sense of who they are at all. So I wouldn't even say that you've lost your identity. Sometimes you don't feel you've ever had one and we have to start from scratch. So you struggle to remember who you were before them, what you enjoyed, and what you truly believed. Now, like me, if you came from a narcissistically abusive parent family, then there may not have been much joy or anything to look back on that was sort of yours or enjoyment because you didn't have a sense, you weren't allowed to develop the identity. Your sense of self gets completely lost. And then the 7th is you give up. Resignation, submission, eventually to avoid constant arguments and to try and bring things back down to some of the good times or the peace even. You might simply give in. You give up. It's that learned helplessness. If you ever took psychology first year, learned helplessness in rats. When they realize they're not going to get fed or get that reinforcement, some rats just lie down and give up. You stop fighting. You stop hoping to keep the peace, even if it means sacrificing your own needs and your own desires, as well as your sanity. That cycle is incredibly powerful and it's sneaky. It pulls you in and it holds you tight. Now, let's look at 5 key things that keep a trauma bond going once it's formed. The first is the slot machine effect. So that intermittent reinforcement. This is one of the biggest reasons trauma bonds are so strong. Think about a slot machine. You don't even win every time, but those unpredictable wins keep you pulling the lever, hoping for the next big payout. In an abusive relationship, it means that they switch back and forth between being cruel and being kind, being loving and being abusive, without any warning. This inconsistency makes your brain constantly chase that good moment. For a rat, it's when's the next pellet coming, hoping that they'll return. It's much harder to walk away from something that's sometimes good than from something that's always bad. Your brain gets wired to crave those rewards after periods of pain, making it almost impossible to break free. For example, they might tear you down with some harsh words. We've been there, making you feel terrible. But after a little while, they suddenly become super affectionate and sweet. They apologize or they charm you like they did at the beginning during that honeymoon phase. This sudden change feels like a huge relief, pulling you back in. Or they might ignore you for days, making you anxious, and then suddenly give you all this attention or promise to change, making you feel reconnected. They might book a reservation at your favorite restaurant. Number 2 is feeling helpless, that power imbalance. In these relationships, one person, the abuser, takes all the control, leaving you feeling helpless and dependent. This isn't just physical control. It's about controlling your life, your money, your plans, your decisions. They twist your thoughts and your feelings, eroding your self-worth and making you believe that you can't manage without them. And that's the illusion. Number 3, mind games, emotional manipulation. So just beyond gaslighting, they use a whole bag of tricks to confuse and upset you. They might always blame you for everything without any foundation or reality. They will bring other people into your arguments to make you feel jealous or insecure, and that's called triangulation. Or give you the silent treatment for days to punish you. They might even control your money or threaten you if you try to stand up for yourself. These tactics are really designed to keep you confused, feeling inadequate, and completely stuck or reliant on them. Number 4, cutting you off, or the isolation. A narcissist will systematically and strategically try to separate you from your family, your friends, and any other supports that you have. They want to be your only source of validation and support, as well as information. They do this to control your thoughts and your feelings. They want to prevent anyone from seeing their true abusive nature and make you more dependent on them. Without anyone else to turn to, your self-esteem drops, and you start to believe their criticisms, making you feel unworthy of any other healthy relationships. And lastly, number 5, the conflicting thoughts, which is the cognitive dissonance. This is that deeply uncomfortable feeling you get when you hold two completely opposite beliefs at the same time, like loving someone who also causes you immense pain. So what do you end up with? Confusing emotions. You might feel a mix of love and fear. Their occasional kindness sort of gives you that spark of love. It reminds you of why you are with him, because he's so kind, or he has these qualities that you rarely see, but they pop out. So you think, the true self came out. But then there's the abusive actions and behavior that causes fear. You cling to those beautiful, loving love bomb memories, even when you're being treated terribly. Then there's the twisted reality. Their gaslighting makes you question your own memory and sanity. You struggle to understand how your experience of events can be so different from their version. Even when you're present, they will tell you that the sky is purple, and they will do it so convincingly that you start to believe maybe the sky is purple. They make excuses. So to deal with their confusion, let's start that again. You end up making excuses. So to deal with your confusion, you might start minimizing or making excuses for their abuse. You might tell yourself, it wasn't that bad, or they were just having a rough day, or they really do love me. This makes it even harder to recognize the abuse and to protect yourself. I say we're gaslighting ourselves. So we blame ourselves. We might even start blaming everything about the abuse on ourselves, believing that somehow that you deserve the mistreatment because you stayed, because you said something you shouldn't have. We make up these excuses and we blame ourselves, because if we blame ourselves, we can have some control of it, or so we think. Because then we think that if we try harder and we can change, things will be better. So it leads to this intense guilt, this intense shame, and self-doubt, making it incredibly hard to decide to leave. So you have this false hope. The trauma bond makes you believe that if you just endure the abuse just a little bit longer, you'll eventually receive affection. You hold on to false hope that they will change, focusing on the good moments and ignoring the bad. These psychological impacts are so profound, they're huge. Trauma bonding doesn't just mess with your mind, it affects your physical body and even how your brain works. Let's dig into that a little bit more around how trauma bonding affects your body and your brain. So it's your body's alarm system, or the stress response. It's constantly being abused, keeping your body in that fight or flight mode. This means your body constantly releases stress hormones like cortisol over time. This makes you more anxious, constantly on edge, and super sensitive to any perceived threat. Now, just a side note, often clients come to me and they say, I'm anxious. I don't know, but I've got social anxiety. They're jumpy. They're anxious in crowds. They're anxious at home. And so, of course, they go to the doctor and say, I'm anxious, which is the symptom of some of this trauma. So we address the anxiety, which is through medication, but we don't address the underlying issue, which is our fight and flight system is working. It's doing what it needs to do. Then there's a reward system. Remember those unpredictable moments of kindness? They trigger a rush of that dopamine in your brain. That's your brain's feel-good chemical. That's the cocaine hit. That creates this powerful connection between the abuser and the feelings of pleasure or relief. Your bonding hormones like oxytocin also get involved during these positive interactions, making the connection even stronger. This can create an almost addictive cycle where you become dependent on the abuser for these emotional highs and the relief from the lows. Then there's the memory and thinking, or the cognitive system. Chronic stress and those high cortisol levels can really damage that part of your brain that handles memory and learning. That's called the hippocampus. This can lead to memory loss, difficulty remembering things clearly, confusion, problems concentrating, mood swings, and even difficulty making good decisions. Now, again, I have a lot of trauma victims who say, I've got black spots in my memory. I don't remember certain things. So when our brain, our thinking brain goes offline because of stress, our emotional brain takes over and it doesn't store the memories in the same place in the filing cabinet of our brain where we can usually access childhood memories. And so we have these black spots, blackouts, whatever you want to call them, where we don't remember. Many people talk about, I don't have memories of my childhood, especially if they've been raised in neglectful or abusive childhoods. Trauma bonding is so complicated. It's devastating, and it affects every single part of you. But there is one fundamental, unbreakable truth I want you to carry with you. And I want you to hear it. You may not feel it, but I want you to hear it. Abuse is never, ever your fault. Understanding these complex ways that our brain, our mind, and our body reacted to an abnormal situation is the huge step forward towards doing something about it, to healing, to reclaiming your life. It helps you see that your reactions were normal responses to an impossible situation, and that the connection you felt wasn't true love, but it was a deep psychological trap. Now, I appreciate that that might be hard to hear. I have many of my clients who tell me that they loved their narcissistically abusive partner. But because the brain does whatever it can to protect us, but it has its normal functions with regards to hormones, we can't control some of the releases of hormones and how we associate and how we interpret them. So if any of this resonates with you, now, you might have a hard time believing it. I get that. We don't want to see things we deny, we push down, we make excuses because we don't want to face the reality that we might have somehow allowed, and I use that word with quotation marks because you didn't allow, but you got caught up in this cycle of push-pull, and it's a strong pull, but it wasn't your fault. And you're not alone. There are many people who are struggling with this, but of course, because of the isolation that a narcissist is very good at doing, we don't often feel like anybody else will understand. When we tell family members or friends, they of course see the charming narcissist. And so they can't believe that this nice guy would do what you're saying, which further pushes you back into isolation with this partner saying, I must be crazy. Of course they're nice. Of course they're wonderful. It must just be me. It's my fault. So understanding that first there's a whole system that is in place that ties us to this abusive person is the first step towards moving forward. I'm not saying what the moving forward plan is, but I am saying it's a first step. So thanks for joining me today. If anything we discussed resonated with you, please know you're not alone and that there's help absolutely available. Check the link below for some services that I offer, or you can visit my website at fourseasonscounseling.com. Take care.